Hi, Coach Mariano here, and this is the first of a series of presentations that I'll be giving over the course of the next, I don't know, year or so. And so what I was thinking about was, what stops many of us from reaching our ultimate success? And as a coach, that's part of my role is to help my clients achieve more by looking at what the internal or external blocks that might be preventing them from moving forward. So in this presentation, what we'll be talking about is, our consciousness and our awareness of who we are. We'll talk a little bit about some of our own self-doubts and what might be preventing us from being successful. Then we'll cover external versus internal blocks. And then we will go more specifically in what we call the specifics of internal blocks, or limiting beliefs, interpretations, assumptions, and gremlins, and then some possible next steps you might be able to take to overcome these. Okay, so just moving on. So our consciousness, one definition of consciousness is that it's your awareness of who you truly are, as opposed to the you that you believe you are and were taught by others. Okay? So it's the awareness of who you truly are. Okay? That's your consciousness. And so the who basically comes from, from our culture. It comes from our friends and our family and who we hang out with. That helps us defining who we are by what we believe, what we know in terms of our faith traditions, in terms of our cultural beliefs. Whereas the what is, what do we do as a person, okay? What is your job, okay? What is your talents and skills? So that's the what. The how is basically, our internal operating system in terms of going about living life and taking action. Okay, so the who, again, it's more of our being, who we are. Our what is more of what we do, our doing, if you will. And how is our operating system in terms of what will we do and in terms of how we do it. Now the coaching concepts usually fall within this range here. Okay? And with coaching, what we try to do is work with our clients to help them evaluate and learn more about who they are and how they're going about doing or not doing in terms of their life. Okay, so I hope this gives you an understanding of where I'm coming from when I say consciousness. And so the higher the level of your consciousness or self-awareness, the more happier you'll become, the more successful, and the more positive in terms of energy that you will put out there in the world. Okay? So, moving on from consciousness, I'm going to talk a little bit about what prevents us from success. And many of us have self-doubts. I know I have. And basically our self-doubts is our lack of faith or confidence in who we are as a person, as a human being. Okay? And so what I want you to do right now is just take a look at these lists and pick out 3 or 5 that seem to speak to you as far as your most limiting, if you will, things that prevent you from moving forward. So for example, I know for me, I tend to be lazy. And by lazy, I mean it's easy for me to just put off things and sit around and maybe watch television or something like that, rather than work on something very important that will move me forward. Something that I also have as far as that helps me in terms of my own doubts are I can be too aggressive. And by too aggressive, I mean especially when, you know, speaking with my wife and always wanting to defend my position, I can get fairly aggressive, and which is not very helpful in the long run. The other thing that comes to mind is about feeling unmotivated. You know, I know once I start something, and I get focused in it, I can accomplish it. But the hardest part is being motivated to just even start to do that. Okay, so these all feed into my own self-doubt, okay, of who I am as a person. So look at these and see what may affect you. Are you not good enough? Are you not smart enough? Are you selfish or insecure? So these self-doubts we need to become more aware of in order to move forward in our life and achieving goals. And next we're going to be talking about our external versus internal blocks. Our external blocks are basically those obstacles that we find outside of ourselves that prevent us from moving forward. So some big examples that I put down here is money. You know, people will say, oh, it takes money in order to get a business started, or I don't have enough money to get an education. Resources, you know, if only I had a better camera, for example, I would be giving videos and doing videos and presentations. Or in terms of our environment itself, let's say, for example, gosh, if you were in the business of selling ice cream, now if you lived in the North Pole, that would be very difficult because of the environment. So it's something external from you, from being able to be successful, for example, in the ice cream business or something like that. So, and that also ties in with location. Other blocks that you may not be aware of are those people, those naysayers that will put you down for what you're trying to accomplish. So be careful when you are around people who are negative and who aren't there to support you. And people who drain you of energy. People who don't really believe in you because really they don't believe in themselves. And a big external block that we have might be time. You know, we may feel, oh, I'm too old, and so I don't have enough time to get started in a new business or start an education. So those are external blocks, and each of these can prevent people, as I say, from reaching their goals. Now the second idea is internal blocks. Now internal blocks are barriers that are created from within oneself that prevents you from moving forward. And so we're going to be talking more specifically about internal blocks. So it's what's within us. And I'm going to use this concept called GAIL. And what a GAIL is it can be a gremlin, an assumption, an interpretation, or a limiting belief. Let me go over that again. A GAIL is a gremlin, an assumption, an interpretation. Oops, I shouldn't have moved that. or a limiting belief. Okay? So these are the types of internal blocks that I find to be the biggest threats, if you will, from preventing a person from succeeding. And as a coach, it's my role or my job to bring about that awareness within my clients in order to help them succeed. So let's go through each one of them, and I'm going to start from the bottom actually and move my way up to Gremlin, because this will be in order of, I would say, least or easiest to break through to Gremlin, which is the hardest internal block to usually break through. Okay, so let's start with limiting belief. So a limiting belief is something that you may accept about yourself, about the world, or something about people that limits you in some way. Okay, I think this picture shows perfectly the block of bringing in these limiting beliefs into your life. And many of these beliefs we may not be aware of, and they come from something from, outside of us that we take on. So, for example, a lot of times I may think that youth are just a bunch of lazy kids that all they want to do is play with their video games and be on their phone texting, and so these negative thoughts about what a youth might be. Okay, so if I took on that limiting belief and I'm meeting youth, that will be the first instinct I would have about that person. That might prevent me from getting to know them better or who they are. One big limiting belief I had was that having wealth would mean that it will eventually lead me to greed and materialism. And I believe that rich people are really greedy people and are unhappy people. So that's one limiting belief that I had to break through, and something I learned from a young age, and I'm not sure where I got it from. Probably part of it is cultural, and part of it could be from my own upbringing. Another limiting belief, to give you an example, is I have to work very hard or many hours, 60 hours in a week, in order to be successful. Sure, I believe in hard work, but do you have to really work 60 hours a week to be successful, prosperous, and have a great life? I don't know. I don't believe so. Not anymore, at least. So, anyways, be careful of what beliefs you take on that are external from you, and you take it as your own truths. So the other internal block I wanted to share with you is interpretation. And what an interpretation is some judgment or opinion that you create because of a particular event or situation, person, or experience that you might believe to be true. Okay, so when I say interpretation, basically, what we see and what we experience through our own lenses, if you will, of our lives is how we're going to feel about the world. So I put these pictures here as a couple of examples of interpretation. This picture here, at first you look at it and you say, oh wow, that's a nice picture of a duck. that's one interpretation of the picture, whereas some other person, when looking at this, may see actually a rabbit. So here's the eyes of the rabbit, and here's the ears of the rabbit. Okay, you see that now? And then in this picture, immediately you might be interpreting this as an old lady with her big crooked nose here, okay? And her hair and this fur. And this is her mouth here and her eyes, okay? But if you take a look at this picture in a different frame of reference, okay, a different frame of reference, she's actually a beautiful young lady. And how do I know that? Because here is her nose and then her eyelash here. And this is an outline of her face as she's looking towards the back here. So you can see this either as a beautiful lady or young lady or an old woman. So, and that's the same thing that you would find in terms of any event. And that's why we have a lot of laws and legal things out there, because one person is interpreting a particular event or scene differently from another. And when you listen to their stories, it sounds like, wait a second, man, they're coming from two different perspectives. And that's just based on their own interpretations. And it will be their own truths. And the real truth is somewhere in between. Okay, so that's interpretation. A third internal block is what we would call an assumption. Okay, now an assumption is that expectation that because something happened in the past to us, it may happen to us again in the future. And so one example might be, let's just say our reality is, let's just say when we go to a job interview, and we interview with someone who, for whatever reason, may be particular about women, about you being a woman, okay? And for that reason, just because you're a woman, you know, they won't hire you regardless of how qualified you are. And so, you know, you do this by going to interview after interview, and you interview, and you still don't get hired. So your assumption for next time will be, wow, the next time I interview with someone, okay, they're not gonna hire me because I'm a woman. Okay? So that reality versus that expectation, you know, creates this gap in terms of what we may believe to be true. Okay? And so assumptions, sometimes you hear when you assume, you became an arse or an ass between you and me, okay? When you assume, okay? So don't assume that just because something bad has happened to you in the past, it will happen again. One particular example that comes to my mind is, yeah, my wife. Unfortunately, she had an operation that didn't go very well, and it happened to have been with this particular hospital that starts with a K. And so now her feeling is that because she's had this really traumatic experience with this particular medical facility, she will not go to that facility anymore for services. Okay, so she's now made the assumption that because of what happened to her in her operation with that particular medical facility in the past, she believes that they have poor care, or they don't care about her at all and her well-being. So again, that's an assumption that prevents her from possibly getting really good care just because of her past experience. So our realities versus our expectation of what may happen in the future could prevent us from moving forward. And basically, that's an assumption. So again, none of us experience the world in the same way. We all and everyone experiences life through the filter of his or her personal history. So the interesting thing about belief systems is that if they are not serving you in a favorable way, they can be changed to ones that are more in alignment with your values. Okay? Which leads us to our final and probably most difficult internal block to remove, and that is our gremlin. And our gremlin is that inner critic that tells you in one way or another that you're not blank enough. And you could fill in that blank. You may not be smart enough, or you may not be good looking enough, or you don't have the experience, okay, enough experience, or anything that prevents you from trying something new. Okay, that's usually your inner critic that's holding you back. Okay, or one gremlin that I have was in terms of sales. Who am I to be able to sell a particular product or a particular service? And so my gremlin holds me back by preventing me and telling me that I am not good enough to be a salesperson, okay? Or I'm not good enough to be a coach. I'm not smart enough. I don't have what it takes. Okay? So we have to be careful with that inner critic that's holding us back. Okay? And so as a coach, these are really some of the tougher internal blocks that I have to work with clients on. And our gremlins actually, I have an evil looking one, can be evil looking, or actually can be cute and good and happy. And we can't remove gremlins from our life, but we can give it a new function in our life. Instead of preventing us from moving forward, we can give it a new job or a new role or responsibility to help us in terms of moving forward. Because our gremlins come when we were young, and they helped us to be safe, to keep us from failure, keep us from hurting. And so they had a purpose when we were younger, but now that we are adults, they're actually preventing us from being successful. I hope that makes sense to you. And so again, we talked about, going back to the start here, our consciousness in terms of who we are and what we are all about and how we go about doing things. We talked about some of the self-doubts that we may have that prevent us from moving forward in our lives. And we talked about external versus internal blocks. And then finally we went to specifics in regards to inner blocks. And we talked about our GAILs, our gremlins, assumptions, interpretations, and limiting beliefs. And so one thing I'd like to ask you to do, and these are some suggestions, is to identify some of your self-doubts, or practice becoming more self-aware, self-conscious, okay, in terms of what your thoughts are, what thoughts are going through in your mind. Notice what GAILs might be coming up for you. Again, your GAIL is your gremlin, assumption, interpretation, or limiting belief that you might have. And you might also want to find a coach to help you break through some of these beliefs that prevent you from success. So until next time, I'm Coach Mariano. I wish you the best in all you do and hope for much success and prosperity in your life. Take care.